So for our series on where is the sweeping industry headed, we have Malcolm Cameron, who is a global equipment and distributor and marketing person. He has been involved in the sweeping industry in the United States for about 15 years, but you have worked with Australia, where you're based, as well as all around the world, Asia, and keeps going. So what are you seeing about sweeping? And I'm interested in your opinion, Malcolm, not only in the U.S., but where do you think the worldwide sweeping industry is going?
Well, Ranger, there is a decided drift in the US to single-engine machines, which is quite new, and that's driven, I think, by costs. I would like to think it's driven by environmental pressure as well. However, in the US, I suspect that is not the case, but it should be. In the rest of the world, one of your favourite subjects of stormwater runoff, pollution from the roads into the drains, is becoming more important, and people are paying more attention to the quality of the sweep to pick up those fines. That really is the lesson that people must learn. Litter is relatively unimportant. It's the fines and the PM10s and the other chemicals in the sweeping sediment. I think that is becoming more recognised around the world. It certainly is in Australia, and I think it probably is starting to be seen more in the US.
And in Asia, when we have the unique opportunity to be talking to someone who has delivered sweepers really around the world and certainly throughout Asia, what are you seeing there? Because there's no impetus, and I know that more and more sweepers, mechanical sweepers, are being delivered in these areas, and yet because the wage rate is so low that it's a lot less expensive to sweep with a broom, they're seeing something that's making them buy these terrifically, relatively expensive mechanical machines to do sweeping with. What is that?
A lot of them are being sold for use on new roads, freeways. You think of Bangkok and think of those flyover roads and freeways that are easy to sweep, and indeed I've supplied equipment to people that are doing that. As for the little back streets in Asia, one, they're very difficult to sweep because the infrastructure is not good. Secondly, the traffic levels are very high. And thirdly, it gets down to what you mentioned, the labour rate is so low that they can send 10 hand sweepers out with a broom and a bucket for a fraction of the price. And lastly, in lots of parts of Asia, except the principal cities like Hong Kong, Singapore, lots of parts of Asia and Africa, they don't care. Littering is not seen as a problem. Asia is completely awash with plastic bags and plastic bottles because they're just discarded as litter. I know that a few years ago in Bangkok they had dreadful flooding problems because the stormwater drains were blocked with plastic and then sediment, and so that there was no runoff and they had to have a major problem. Some places are starting to address that, but it's a mindset of what is clean. They keep their houses clean. Places like India, where I've been with you, Ranger, you see them with their little whisk brooms sweeping the footpath in front of their shop.
That's true.
Straight to the gutter. They don't care. They don't pick it up.
Yeah.
So it's until that pressure really comes on to these places, third world countries perhaps, until the pressure comes on to them that litter and rubbish is causing a big problem, they won't do anything. They'll live with what they've got. It's gradually changing. I'm going to South Africa next month to do some work in Cape Town where they pride themselves in being clean, but I can assure you other parts of South Africa, I've been to Nigeria, Ghana, Kenya, pretty grubby.
All right. Well, thank you, Malcolm. That'll be very interesting to a lot of our watchers. Thanks.
Good.
Well, I'm looking forward to hearing what Ray Confer has to say on our topic of how sweeping will be changing. Ray is the head of a very successful company called C&J Parking Lot Sweeping, and I think maybe something else, pressure washing, but only because he does pretty much anything that the customer needs to be done that they do. And he's on our advisory board for the World Sweeping Association. Been in the business for 40 years, and you've seen a lot of change already, Ray. I know. Where do you think it's going from here?
Well, I think it's becoming a cleaner America, and I think they're becoming more and more aware of that. So I think it's going to increase the business of keeping everything clean, keeping all the storm sewers clean. So after 40 years of sweeping, it's changed quite a bit. Equipment has gone up quite a bit. The technology has gone up quite a bit.
Is it a lot harder to work on the equipment these days, do you think, or easier because it's more simple, or?
No, it's a lot of electronics, and dirt really don't go well together. We're lucky to have a guy, Ali Munaj, that works for us. I mean, that's an ace mechanic that handles all that stuff, but it's a lot of electronics.
Are people sweeping parking lots as much as they were before?
For a while there was a downsize in it a little bit, because when the economy went down, people had to cut back. We're finding that some of the people didn't want to go back, but they wanted the same level of service, and that's where you just got to know your numbers and tell them, no, this is what it is. If you want that, it's going to be this amount of money. There's no sense sweeping for free or trying to learn another lesson that if you don't have money, you ain't going to be able to pay for your equipment or your help. Speaking of help, help's going to be it's going to be a national problem. Everywhere in any business you're going to have a help problem. So you got to be able to take care of your help, and it's just not the money too. It's other things that the quality of life and them for us. So we treat everybody in our place like a family, and that's what really helps. We all watch each other and help each other. After 40 years, I'm happy. I've got about 48 guys that work for me, and a lot of them have been there a long time. A long time, over 20, 30 years. So.
Yeah, that's fabulous to be able to do, and I can sure vouch for that. They are like a family when they're down here at the trade show. Their management team, and I know that passes down to how they treat their people. So
I always try to help other ones in the organization that call or need something. I remember when I first started, I had people that helped me too, and I just pass it along. And it pays off in the long run, and you make a lot of good friends too. It's a pleasure.
Right. That's one thing to look forward to in the future when you're in the industry. Come to NPE and make some more friends.
Yeah, and you know what, Ranger? You are one of the smartest guys in the industry, I have to say, that really helped us out a lot too, with all your knowledge and organization and stuff like that. I can't thank you enough. I really can't.
Well,
thank you.
That's wonderful, Ray. Thank you. No, he was not paid to say that, so that makes it even better.
I don't need to get paid to say that. That's just the downright truth.
Thank you. We're talking to Mike Higgins, and I'll be very interested to hear his perspective. He's Vice President and General Manager of Elgin Sweepers, and our question is, how do you see the sweeping industry changing kind of over time in the next few years, a decade even? And Mike has been in this business for 30 years, so you've seen a lot of changes, I know, already, Mike.
I have, and what we're seeing today really is a continuation of what we've been seeing. Customers in general are wanting to do more with less. So, getting more out of their sweeper, be able to do the same or more work with, say, less horsepower. The complexity with the engines now has really become a big factor with all the emission requirements going up to Tier 4 final. So we're seeing customers preferring single engine units now more so than they did in the past. And because we're able to manage horsepower better with new technologies, we're able to get the same work or even more work done with less horsepower and one less engine. So that's definitely a trend. We get a lot of questions about, electrification. When are we going to have an autonomous sweeper, and that sort of thing, and that's probably
well, we all want to know that, so I'm good for that.
It's probably a little further out, but there's certainly people talking about that now and asking us those questions. So we have our engineers and team always trying to look at that stuff and be on the forefront of it whenever it comes in the fold.
Well, we're seeing some of that in Europe, but frankly, it's for those smaller machines and that are not very ubiquitous in the United States. So it's a lot harder to take a big piece of iron and make it electric than the smaller ones. And are you seeing much of a move now that the economy is getting a little better? There's fewer workers, harder to get CDL drivers. We're standing in front of a Broom Badger, which I know is a non-CDL machine, versus some of the bigger units. Is that making a difference in sales?
Certainly, we've seen that. That's part of why we came out with the Broom Badger, to have that offering for customers that want to have a non-CDL machine. But I think that's been there. I don't know that there's been a big movement. That's always been there, and the offering's out there now. People have choices.
Okay. Anything else you want to say about that?
No, I think that's good. We're looking forward to a good year. We had a good year in 2017, and things are looking bright and positive in 2018. So the show's been great. So we're definitely looking forward to 2018.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay, Ranger. Thank you.